Welcome back to Spidey Talk. I am your host, J-Man, and we're just discussing what could have been in the Spider-Man continuity. Talking about the Marvel 616 universe, none of that Ultimate or any of that other stuff. Basically just going back and reviewing what happened in the Clone Saga. And I was talking about how those two major events that made the Clone Saga very significant were, number one, the death of Aunt May, and number two, more importantly, the pregnancy and birth of Mary Jane and Peter Parker's daughter. Alright? Now, I really wish that they had gone ahead and written out the story where Mary Jane gives birth to this baby girl, and also Ben Reilly becomes the new Spider-Man. Peter Parker moves on to live the married life and the life of a father, raising his family. That way Peter can go off into the sunset and have his happiness. His story is pretty much complete, but the Spider-Man legacy lives on the way it should. As Spider-Man being single, for the most part single, being unmarried, being, you know, kind of like a new Spider-Man, like a clean slate, a fresh start, but it's still the same character pretty much. And that's what Ben Reilly was. He was a copy of Peter Parker. Everything you liked about Peter Parker was right there in Ben Reilly. So there's really no particular reason why we couldn't have Ben Reilly as the future Spider-Man. But Dan Jurgen, if you go and you research this, read about the history of the Clone Saga, go to wikipedia.org. I gathered all the information on there and put together a really nice article that I think pretty much sums it up. But public enemy number one of Ben Reilly was Dan Jurgen. Dan Jurgen, who was the writer of Superman, came on board to write Spider-Man stories. And he was a fan of Spider-Man. He was a fan of Peter Parker. He didn't want to write about Ben Reilly. He wanted to write about Peter Parker. So he had this major complaint, and he brought up this big to-do to the editor at the time, who was Bob Badansky. He brought up this big to-do about how we shouldn't be using Ben Reilly as Spider-Man, and we should go back to having Peter Parker. So he pretty much single-handedly changed the entire direction of the Clone Saga. When it was originally conceived under the leadership of Tom DeFalco, the idea was just it was going to be a simple story, took place over maybe a couple months and not 3 or 4 years like it turned out to be. But the story would be Act 1, they established Ben Reilly, and then established Ben Reilly as a clone. Then Act 2, I think they turn around and say Peter Parker's really the clone. And then Act 3, they reverse that again and say, no, Peter Parker's really Spider-Man. He's not the clone, but Peter Parker's going off to live his married life with Mary Jane and his new baby. So Ben Reilly's taking over as Spider-Man. End of story. And that's pretty much the Clone Saga right there. But people at Marvel had a major problem with that. Mostly Dan Jurgen and Bob Badansky, who kept changing his mind, going back and forth, really wishy-washy. That's what led us to this whole thing now, where we have constantly this this up-in-the-air romance and relationship between Peter Parker and Mary Jane that's constantly getting in the way of stories, constantly getting in the way of character development, because the writers don't know what to do. It's like, we don't want to use Mary Jane, but we have to use Mary Jane. And they're married, but they can't have children. Or they're married, but we don't want them to stay married and grow old. So, you see what I'm saying? That whole situation could have been easily avoided if they had just written Peter Parker and Mary Jane off into the sunset to live their happy little life together, raise their child. Ben Reilly becomes the new Spider-Man, and the world is in total happiness, total harmony. I mean, some people out there might have a problem with that. Some people might not like Ben Reilly as much as Peter Parker, or might not like Ben Reilly at all. And I just don't understand that. Ben Reilly is pretty much the same exact character as Peter Parker, because, you know, he's an exact clone. He's the perfect clone of Peter. And we don't even know 100% for sure that Ben Reilly is the clone. You know, that was never completely cemented. Even though they wrote the whole thing with Norman Osborn explaining how he had such and such guy, what was his name, the Jackal, create Ben Reilly to be the perfect clone, to give Peter Parker doubts about himself. It doesn't add up. Logically, it just doesn't quite make sense. I mean, if you go and you look at the rewrite, there was a rewrite of the Clone Saga. Call it whatever you want. Call it, you know, it's not really a retcon officially, but the story that Tom DeFalco and Howard Mackey wrote in 2009, I believe, and called the Clone Saga, which was basically a retelling of the Clone Saga the way they had originally planned it or imagined it, to a certain extent. But if you go and you read that, it changes things drastically. It's a whole lot different than the actual Clone Saga, which happened in 94 through 97. Okay? And one of the major outcomes of that is Ben Reilly survives, and number two, Peter and Mary Jane's daughter is born. So pretty much that 2009 story called the Clone Saga is a prequel to Amazing Spider-Girl, okay, which has already been concluded. They finished this series. It went till its end. I'm not sure how it ends, what the conclusion was, but it's done pretty much. For now, it's over. And in the 616 Marvel Universe, the main universe, there's now some other person calling themselves Spider-Girl. So that is really annoying, really confusing, and I wish they would just establish that this is the one and only true Spider-Girl, the daughter of Mary Jane and Peter Parker, that was retrieved from Norman Osborn by Kane, okay? That's what happened. It explains it in here. Well, maybe not this one, but in the Spider-Girl series, it's explained. In the Amazing Spider-Man and Web of Spider-Man and all that Marvel 616 continuity, there's never even a single mention of the baby again. Like, they never even give you any clue as to what happened. And they do that on purpose. They pretty much just wanted to drop the ball. And when I say they, I'm talking about the editor-in-chief at the time, Bob Harris. He pretty much just closed the door on it and said, to hell with it. The fans don't need answers. The fans aren't going to get answers. We're just going to leave it as is. Okay? And I'm talking about how Norman Osborn hired this woman called Allison Monogram, something like that, to basically kidnap the baby, or the child, the unborn child, the stillbirth, whatever it was she had in the box, take it to Europe, and pretty much that's it. Just keep it away from Peter and MJ forever, and don't let anybody know about it. That's basically what happened, and we never got really a follow-up on that at all, and it's seriously disappointing and a big plot hole in the Spider-Man universe. Thank you very much, Bob Harris. Okay, so now that's pretty much my rant on the Clone Saga. There's a whole lot more that can be said, and I really hope that you people, or any of my viewers, audience, hope you guys add your 2 cents. Really looking forward to your comments. What did you like about the Clone Saga? What didn't you like about it? How did you see it going? Or if you could have written the conclusion yourself, how would you have made it turn out? Have you read Spider-Girl? Do you like Spider-Girl? Anything like that, just please hit me up with your comments. Thanks for watching my show. I really appreciate it, and see you next time.